Vincent Canby of the New York Times calls this film a stunning spectacle, an adventure comedy not quite like any other, and the most benign movie ever made about 19th century capitalism run amok. Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times says, as a document of a quest and a dream, and as the record of man's audacity and foolish visionary heroism, there has never been another movie like it. And Letterboxd user Dirk Diggler says, fuck La La Land. This is the film for the ones who dream. On this episode of Ruined Childhoods, we decide the fate of Fitzcarraldo.
Sequel. Reboot. Which one will it be? It's the Ruined Childhoods podcast.
Accendini per l'eccetia.
Wow.
Or in English, greetings, starfighters.
Wow, you really went for it, huh?
Well, that's kind of the theme of this movie, is it not? Fitzcarraldo.
That is very, very, very true.
Klaus Kinski.
Everybody, welcome to Ruined Childhoods, the podcast where me, John, and he, Dan, talk about the movies, the cult and classic movies that we all love. Or, Dan, have you ever seen Fitzcarraldo before?
No, this was my first foray into the filmography of Werner Herzog.
Completely. All of it.
I cannot think of another one of his films that I've actually seen.
Wow.
I mean, look, we'll get into it. This will not be my last.
Okay.
So, in fact, as I was wrapping up watching Fitzcarraldo, I was watching it on Prime. So, of course, it went right into Nosferatu. And I was like, I really want to watch this, but it's also getting late and I have to go to bed. And I'm like, Klaus Kinski will give me nightmares.
Yeah. We'll get to that. We'll get to that shortly. But so we talk about these cult and classic movies and how, what we would do if we were to bring them back as some sort of new property. And this is a really cool one. I mean, I loved doing Double Impact last week. Dan, that was so much fun.
So much fun. We want to thank John Gabris for coming on. Had a great time. We
don't normally have guests on, but no. I feel like when we do, it's people that we really want to have on, people who really have something to say. And Gabris certainly has a lot to say.
Black silk underwear.
Yeah. When you get somebody like Gabris on, you certainly have to do a little bit less work because that they've got their hands on the wheel the entire time.
Yes. Yeah. Not that. And of course, this work is a labor of love. And actually, I wanted to point out, to those who may have started listening to us recently, listening for the first time, just in general, not aware of this, I would call us just a two-man crew, but I don't think I can put myself at that level because John is not only the co-host of the podcast, John does all of the mixing and mastering and all the things to make it sound great. He pulls the sound clips and he's got them ready to go. He takes care of the intro and everything. So there's just the two of us doing this, but I pretty much just sit here and go off on tangents and John does the rest. So,
well, I like to think that for me, it's more of just like, I am always trying to find a way to get nerdier with things. So it's like, when it comes to doing audio clips, our listeners won't know this, but Dan, you will see that on our remote podcasting platform, this is going to be the first episode where not only are we going to hear the clips, but Dan, you will also see the visuals of the clips. Not that it matters. Not that we lost anything by only hearing it the last times, but this time I was just like, this will be fun.
Wow. Yeah, this is a good one to start with on that.
I thought so. I thought so.
Yeah.
But do you have any more thoughts about Double Impact before we move on to Fitzcarraldo?
You know, I've got a one more thing for Double Impact, and I have a one more thing for Hall Pass. So, so first we were talking about the Double Impact concept with clones involving another action hero, and neglected to mention Arnold Schwarzenegger playing clones of Arnold Schwarzenegger in The Sixth Day.
I was going to say The Sixth Day, right? Yeah.
Kind of it's a fun little movie. I've seen it a couple of times.
That was in that era where he also did like, you know, Eraser and stuff like that, where
it's post End of Days. End of Days is kind of the turning point.
Yeah, End of Days, Eraser, and The Sixth Day, where I feel like they all kind of clump into the same category for me, where it's just like, okay, all right.
Yeah. You know, insert like cool character actor as the bad guy.
Yeah.
Insert, you know, love interest that's 20 years younger than him.
Because those were probably late 90s?
Eraser was 96, so Eraser celebrating its 25th anniversary this year. My hero James Caan was the bad guy
one with
that.
Vanessa Williams? Is that right?
Yes, indeed.
Wow.
Miss Save the Best for Last, which was a hit. For those of you who aren't my age, it was a hit song of hers back in the early 90s.
Right, yeah.
It's a good song. Good song. But of course, she's also, you know, known for her performances on like Ugly Betty. I think she was really good on that.
Didn't she do the voice of like a Disney villain?
Oh wait,
I'm feeling like we are very unprepared for this conversation, or at least I'm bringing up things that I'm not willing to like do the full research on. I guess I should probably grab my phone.
We have all these things and I'm like, I want to say maybe I think my Disney Connect. Did she sing Colors of the Wind for Pocahontas?
I don't know. You know, Pocahontas is one that I don't know if I've seen.
I have not. I've heard the song Colors of the Wind, because I was alive then.
She was in, and I'm pretty sure we must have mentioned this on the appropriate episode, but she was on the BET First Wives Club series.
Oh, yes. Indeed.
And her voice most certainly has come through the speakers of our both of our TVs with the show Doc McStuffins, as we both have daughters.
Yes. Who love Doc McStuffins. Doc McStuffins. Hey, I did toy surgery earlier, so.
She was on The Good Wife, which is a fantastic show.
Oh, yes. While you're doing the research, because we don't both need to be doing this, I'll share my one more thing for Hall Pass. And this is because I saw a pseudo remake. Not really. I don't know how, but I watched Yes Day on Netflix. Mind you, I watched this with my wife and daughter. This was her pick. She's 7. So Yes Day, which is pretty bad. So the idea is that the frazzled parents, Jennifer Garner and I want to say Edgar Ramirez, is the father.
You can say it.
I think so. It's not in my notes. But basically they say no to so many things that their kids, one of whom is 14 and she wants to go to like a music festival with her like friend and her friend's older cousin. And of course, the friend is not a good influence, but that's neither here nor there. You know, they've got the precocious middle child and then the adorable, youngest who's like around, 5. And the kids convince the parents that they should have a Yes Day. And this is something that is suggested to them by their guidance counselor, who is played...
Joy Behar?
But no... No, I actually had to stop myself because I started going into that and I was like, their wives are really frustrated. Nope. No, the guidance counselor at the school, who pops up pretty much everywhere because I don't know, I guess I have no idea what this guy's contract was. what's his name? Nat Faxon.
Oh yeah, Nat Faxon.
Nat Faxon. I'm like, I know
he's got real guidance counselor energy.
Yeah, but he's kind of like the sad, pathetic guidance counselor who's like, he's hiding.
Academy Award winner Nat Faxon.
Yes, Academy Award winner Nat Faxon, screenplay for The Descendants, a wonderful film. And so he tells them about a yes day, and he's like, this is what I do to my kids. And it gives them, it's like Hall Pass. It gives them the choice to do, like, the parents have to say yes to everything the kids want to do. And then it's like, the kids kind of see that like, okay, there are some things that it's okay to say no to, like going to some type of like 90s style rave. The one thing I will give it points for Jennifer Garner, she's got like, I was watching her in this movie and I was like 1980s Diane Keaton. Jennifer Garner should be in a remake of Baby Boom. Oh. Like, I was like, this is the connection my mind is making. So anyway, Yes Day is Hall Pass for kids and it is terrible. You have to, you need to spend a good 5 minutes after the movie explaining to your child, like you have to point out the plot, so many plot holes in it. Like, why you don't just like kind of gloss over it because you're watching it with your kid. You actually point out the plot holes so that your kid knows this shit doesn't happen.
Yeah.
This is fantasy. This is not real. And
absolutely.
Here are all the reasons why. So anyway, don't recommend it.
Okay.
And there we go. And that's all I have to say about that.
Okay. I've got a bit of sequel news. I don't know, Dan, if you saw, but Creed 3 will officially not be bringing back Sylvester Stallone as Rocky Balboa, making his first non-appearance in a Rocky universe movie.
I had not heard that. I'm okay with that because of Creed 2. I feel like unfinished business has been finished.
Right. Well, Creed 2 was the Rocky 4 sequel.
Yes, the Rocky 4 sequel / remake.
Yeah.
And I loved it.
Hey, I thought that it was a lot of fun, and I don't think that it was as good as the first Creed. No. So I am very much looking forward to seeing what they do with Creed 3.
And Michael B. Jordan is directing, so it'll be his directorial debut, which be interesting to watch for that reason as well.
Very, very exciting. So, Dan, Fitzcarraldo, let's talk about it.
The ship gets sailing. Oh, I forgot to drop my line from, since we did Double Impact last week, from Roundhouse to Art House. Here we go.
Yes. Here we go. How do you want to do this? Do you want to do the synopsis first for anybody who is unfamiliar with this? There's so much to cover for this. All right. So, Dan, what I'm going to do instead of reading a synopsis the way I typically do, I'm going to let the man himself, Werner Herzog, describe the plot of 1982's Fitzcarraldo.
It's a strange story, a little bit Sisyphus-like story, a story of challenge of the impossible. The leading character's name is Brian Sweeney Fitzgerald, and since nobody can pronounce his name in the Amazon here, he calls himself Fitzcarraldo, and he also founds a town with the name Fitzcarraldo. There was a historical figure whose name was Carlos Fermin Fitzcarrald, a caoutchouc baron. I must say the story of this caoutchouc baron did not interest me so much. What interested me more was one single detail, that was that he crossed an isthmus from one river system into another with a boat. They disassembled the boat and put it together again on the other river. And that intrigued me to write a story about big opera in the jungle and about a man who wants to bring Caruso into Iquitos and build a huge opera house. And he fails to get the money for it, and so finally he decides to make his fortune as a robber baron. And he buys a territory which is out of reach because there are very, very strong rapids, and you can't move a big boat into the upper tributary. And for exploiting an area like this, you need a big boat for all the logistics and transports and so. And what he does actually is that he moves in a parallel tributary, because he knows there's one geographical point where the two river systems almost join. There's only 1 or 2 miles in between. And with the help of 1,100 savage Indians, he moves the boat across this mountain ridge. But it all fails because the Indians release the boat. They untie it, and it floats downstreams and it crashes through the rapids, and everything was in vain. And still, with that defeat, Fitzcarraldo is able to turn it in some kind of a victory, a very painful one. And that's basically the story of the film.
So I don't know if I could say it any better, probably because Werner Herzog is the best at saying anything. The way that he speaks, everything is poetry, and he is truly a madman. He is the kind of person that you want to be making films that no one else would be willing to make. He's the kind of person who can get shot during an interview and continue the interview. We said on the last episode that Jean-Claude Van Damme is the type of person for whom of anything that starts with legend has it could very well be true. The same goes for Werner Herzog. And the same could also be said about his relationship with Fitzcarraldo's star, Klaus Kinski, who did about, maybe 5 or 6 other movies with Herzog. They actually
did 5 total.
5. They knew each other from childhood. There's a movie called My Best Fiend, all about the relationship between Werner Herzog and Klaus Kinski. I don't have any clips because it's all in German, but it's really fantastic. And they lived in the same like boarding house together. As young men. So
I was
truly fascinating.
I was watching part of that, and I think it was before he moved into the boarding house. Like Kinski lived in like this, like the attic that was filled with like dead leaves up to his knees, and he was always naked.
Yeah,
and I mean, but it's kind of like you look at this guy and you're like, of course he's crazy.
Yeah, and leading up to Fitzcarraldo, he had already been in like 180 movies. Like, the math doesn't make sense. Like, how did he do all this? And he made so many movies after this, and he's truly just a wonder.
I think it was just one of those, like, you know, as German film companies were starting to, I guess, exist and make films after World War II. Like I think in My Best Fiend, Herzog tells about the first time he saw Klaus Kinski on screen, and it was like this, I don't know, early to mid 1950s war movie that he has this like minor role in. Yeah, but it's like he stands out. Like,
well, I mean, there's so much about him that just really grabs your attention. And by the way, he passed away in 1991. So I would say pour one out, but he was kind of a bad dude.
Oh, terrible
dude in every, I mean, I don't know if he's murdered anybody, but, you know, allegedly he was very abusive to his daughter from a very, very young age. And just kind of a monster. And
absolutely, like by all appearances, just like abhorrent. Probably had a number of behavioral disorders. Like his Jesus tours that he would do.
Truly a madman.
Oh yeah, I mean, like it's almost like someone like that could almost only. Was he German?
Yes,
he was German. Yeah, so. But like, this is a guy who comes out of, you know, living in Germany during World War II. I don't know what he did in World War II. I don't think he had much to worry about.
He was, oh my God, yeah, look at him. He was born in 1926. And yeah, I don't know. I didn't do any research exactly about what he was doing between the mid 30s and mid 40s. But I don't know. Needless to say.
And it's worth noting that he actually was not originally cast in this role. He replaced, of course, Jason Robards.
Wow. I mean, the difference between those two actors is really astronomical. And also, he is kind of a combination character of Jason Robards as Fitzcarraldo and also Mick Jagger, who played his kind of like right-hand man. And,
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
so
what character did that become? Oh, like
it didn't become anybody.
Okay.
It didn't become anybody.
The tall dude.
Actually, you know what? I'm going to let Werner Herzog say it himself.
And I have decided that I would not replace his part. You can't replace him. So I think that's the biggest loss that I have had in my career as someone who makes films.
Wow, bold words. But basically what happened was Jason Robards came down with like a form of dysentery and had to be replaced. And then the Rolling Stones were about to go on tour for like 2 years. So I think it was their first farewell tour. And then he was just like, well, I don't know. But there's a scene...
Oh, sorry. Just to put things in perspective, their most recent farewell tour was postponed by COVID. That's how recent that was.
Yeah. So floating around online. And Dan, have you seen the movie Burden of Dreams? It's the documentary about the making of
No, I have not seen that yet. But after watching Fitzcarraldo,
it's necessary viewing.
Yeah. Have
so
to see
there's a scene. There's a scene in the movie where Fitzcarraldo goes up into the bell tower of a church, and he's basically yelling from the top of this church and ringing the bell about how he's going to bring the opera to this small village in Peru. So I'm going to play first the version of that scene with Jason Robards and Mick Jagger, and then we'll play the scene with Klaus Kinski.
The operating kingdom! We need opera here! Don't you want music in your soul? Oh, yeah! Come and join us!
And now here's the Klaus Kinski version.
This church remains closed till this town has its opera house. I want the opera house. I want my opera house. I want the opera house. This church remains closed till this town has its opera house. I want my opera house. I want my opera house. I want my opera house!
Wow.
Mick Jagger, it sounds so much like Mick Jagger in the beginning of that Dancing in the Streets duet he did with Bogus, where he's like, South America! And I love Robards. I mean, but man, it's hard to argue. It's almost like a Robards portrayal would have been very well acted, and
I'm sure
it would have been very Merchant Ivory. It would have felt like very Merchant Ivory, whereas this feels so signature. And I'm saying this being the only film of Herzog's that I've seen. It just kind of feels like there's a stamp on this film that having Robards wouldn't have given it. And I think I don't know. I don't know if there's like a big movement like release the Jagger cut or something, but
Well, it would be. I think they shot about 40% of the movie. I imagine everything except for moving the boat over the small mountain. But basically, so I want to say that like, and I feel very like uneducated saying something like this because I definitely watched a lot of Herzog stuff back when I was in college, and then when he would release documentaries in the subsequent years, I'd check them out. But like, I feel like I was more knowledgeable about Herzog and his films, like I don't know, between 15 and 20 years ago. But there's definitely a theme throughout a lot of his movies about people who are driven to madness by their desires, and Grizzly Man is a really good example of that, which is a fantastic documentary. Then also with Herzog, Aguirre, The Wrath of God is also, it's just this person who, really just, I don't know, delusions, just a completely over the top person, of course, played by Kinski. And Fitzcarraldo, it's this person with this dream, this singular vision, and we don't know exactly how he found his way to Peru, how he got involved with this community and why he's there, especially because he loves the opera so much. You would think that he would just want to be someplace where it's around him all the time, but he is there and he has this dream. And what Herzog glazes over in the synopsis that we played is that he is a kind of a failed entrepreneur, but he's the kind of person who people believe in. And so one of his goals to raise money to start this opera was to kind of create this railroad system. And then when that failed, he started to get into this business of selling ice, and that wasn't really going anywhere. And his girlfriend, Molly, who is a madam at a brothel, I can't necessarily tell if he actually loves her or if he's with her because of her connections.
I think,
but she gives him the idea to, rub elbows with certain people and get into the rubber industry,
which he doesn't feel. He's like, even though the movie starts with him like trying to crash an opera,
that's so good.
It's like that's the only way that he feels comfortable around like the rich and powerful, the rubber barons.
Yeah.
Of Peru or I'm sorry, is that where this is?
Yeah.
I feel like I don't know if he's specific. I feel like they filmed it in Peru.
It's in Peru. There's They were filming this also. There's so much we could really talk about. I know we're just going to be talking in zigs and zags this whole time, but they were filming this at the time, unbeknownst to Herzog, that there was this conflict between Peru and Ecuador, and they were kind of getting right in the middle of it. And this movie, for me, and I don't know if I'm just maybe looking at it from this angle because it's so present in my mind, but a lot of it I feel definitely has to do with native rights and exploiting natives, the indigenous peoples of certain lands, and certainly industry and capitalism is, finding its way into the lives of the indigenous peoples of these areas and forcing them out. And I don't know if this was in, no, it wouldn't have been in My Best Fiend, but it's definitely in Burden of Dreams. But basically what they did is they paid the indigenous people who are in this movie $3.50 a day, which was, I think, twice the amount that they would get if they were doing any work anywhere else. And they would also make money on the side selling the ability to take photos with them for also $3.50 a pop. So they were actually making quite a bit of money. But the thing is, they didn't have much agency when it came to doing anything about their land rights, because the land, even though it is the land that they live on, does not legally belong to them in the eyes of the country's governments. So by working with him on this movie, Werner Herzog would help them purchase the land so that nobody could develop on it. And that was, definitely the right thing to do, and a really fascinating way that he got involved with these people. And in a way, he's doing what Fitzcarraldo's doing. He's exploiting the native people to fulfill his dream. At least he is doing things to help them as a result. It's not one-sided.
But there's such an authenticity, or it feels very authentic, at least. Like it, other films, or other like filmmakers that it reminded me of, like it reminded me of like a Terrence Malick film at times. Where it's visual poetry, and it's almost like the story doesn't matter right now. But to your point about, kind of what this film shows with the, Europeans beginning to, profit off of the land and from the people. You've got this great shot in the film as the ship is going upriver, and it's like the backdrop is just beautiful, lush trees, and then there's just the pipe with black smoke chugging out. And it's like this, this virgin territory has now been tainted by the mark of industry. And it's just like, I thought like the visual meaning of that, and just that it's like, this corruption of the culture, by this invasion of Europeans and, of course, colonists. I'm not sure what, they don't really address that much in this, but it seems like it would be.
Yeah, it's definitely present in Herzog's mind as they're filming, and I'm going to play a couple things from Burden of Dreams, which is streaming on the Criterion channel. I got a 2-week free trial just for the purposes of doing this.
Oh, sweet.
And that's one of those where it's like, once I can afford to justify having one more thing, it's going to be that. So I'm trying to take advantage of every day of this 14-day trial. I watched The Hustler last night, which I hadn't ever seen before. So
oh wow, me neither.
That was a lot of fun.
I've never seen it. Seen Color of Money.
Well, that's why I'm like, got to watch Color of Money. So here's a little bit from Burden of Dreams about native culture in the area.
In this case, we will probably have one of the last feature films with authentic natives in it. They are fading away very quickly, and it's a catastrophe and a tragedy that's going on, and we are losing riches and riches and riches, and we lose cultures and individualities and languages and mythologies, and we'll be stark naked at the end. We'll end up like all the cities in the world now, with skyscrapers and a universal kind of culture like the American culture.
And before we just move on from that, I want to play one other thing where he talks about the native people that he is working with.
It should not end up as an ethnographic film. I also stylize them, and I have them in the film as they probably are not precisely in their normal life. They do things that they normally would not do. They act in that film, and that interests me even more. Yet they have an authenticity of their culture and their behavior, their movements, their language in it that will just disappear from the face of this earth. I don't want to live in a world where there are no lions anymore, or where there are no people like lions, and they are lions.
Nobody says a sentence like Werner Herzog.
No. And it just, what was it? It speaks to what I meant about, like, I'm like, I am perceiving this as authentic with very little knowledge of what would actually be authentic. So I like that, he's like, I'm not going for 100% authenticity. I'm going for like 95% authenticity and with a little stylization.
Yeah. And Herzog is nothing if not very thoughtful. And I do want to make sure to like give him credit for considering, being delicate about the cultures and Burden of Dreams. I mean, which, by the way, when a movie has a documentary about the making of it, you know that it's going to be something special. But in Burden of Dreams, they explore what happens with actually working with a lot of these indigenous peoples on the set. And, when you have people from different tribes and who have different customs, there's a lot of considerations that you don't know about until they become an issue. Like, these people can't eat the food that is prepared by that type of person, or this and that. And there were times where there was really low morale, and what was customary in those tribes, what to do was to get them a sex worker. And that's just, he was just kind of listening to, I think he was actually told by like a missionary, like a religious missionary who worked with the particular indigenous tribes, who kind of advised him on how to approach different situations. So it's just really fascinating. And
I have a question, and I don't know if this is covered at all in Burden of Dreams. Which crew member offered to kill Klaus Kinski?
That wasn't in Burden of Dreams. I don't know. I know that they each had plans to have the other person killed at one point, Herzog and Kinski. I know that there were times where they were threatening to kill each other on the set of Aguirre, The Wrath of God.
Well, which in My Best Fiend, he talks about, he's like, I did not direct him with a loaded rifle pointed at his head.
Yeah, there's a lot of lore that goes along with these two guys, and it's hard to really figure out what's true and what's not, because all of it seems so believable, but would only be believable with the two of them and not with anybody else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about like how Kinski apparently locked himself in a bathroom for 48 hours and just smashed everything to pieces while he was in there.
At the boarding house. Yeah.
I have no trouble imagining this.
Yeah. A complete madman.
But that's why he's perfect in this.
He's perfect in this. The parts where he's meant to play sincere, I buy it. Like, when he has to take it down a notch, he does such a good job. But then once he's provoked, he kicks it up. I'm going to play a clip from the first meeting that he has with a very wealthy rubber baron who kind of helps him get into the rubber industry. And this is where he's really talking about his passions. This is right after he crashes that opera.
I'm doing all this because I have one dream. The opera. The great opera in the jungle.
Fitzcarraldo will build it, and Caruso will sing at the premiere. It's only the dreamers who move mountains.
Gotta love that foreshadowing.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, and Claudia Cardinal.
She's wonderful.
No slouch from, Sergio Leone's Once Upon a Time in the West.
That's right.
Yeah, which, like, she's pretty badass in that. So
yeah, she's great. I think that she's awesome. There's this awesome scene where he's like telling her that she's not going to come with him on the journey. And to make up for it, he gives her this painting of the two of them where she looks all lovely and everything. And he just looks like crazy and weird. Oh my God. Do they sell that print anywhere? That would probably sell so well for like film nerds. It's so weird.
All right. Yeah. You know who we haven't talked about are the members of his crew. Love the captain.
Yeah.
That guy's... He's a good guy.
I'm going to play a clip of him first meeting the captain. He's interviewing for crew, and the captain, I'm blanking on his name, but he's so good.
What's your name?
Paul Riesenbrink. I'm Dutch. But they call me Orinoco Paul, because I know every goddamn bend in that river.
You've sailed the river safely so far?
Yes. My last ship was the Adolfo. My eyesight isn't so good, but I cannot be fooled.
What do you mean?
The jungle plays tricks on your senses. It's full of lies, demons, illusions. I have learned to tell the difference between reality and hallucinations.
I see you took part in the Pachitea expedition in '96?
Yes, as helmsman. On the return trip, I was the captain. The captain died. There were only 5 survivors.
So badass.
He's so badass that I keep wondering as I'm watching this, I'm like, why is he doing this? Like, why is he putting up with this shit? Like, he's too good for this. But he just seems to be into it. He's like, fuck it.
And then there's, what is it, Arokeke? Is that the chef's name? The crazy cook?
Oh, yeah. Who brings on the women, his two assistants.
My God. It's like Arokeke or something like that. He's wild. And then there's the guy, the mechanic, who comes with the boat. He buys the boat, by the way, from the Don Aquilino, who's the rubber baron that we met at the beginning of the movie, and who's, I don't know, he believes in Fitzcarraldo, and it's kind of a weird dynamic that they have. He kind of shows them the ropes about, you know, harvesting the rubber, and the only reason why there's this piece of land that, you know, Fitzcarraldo can buy and harvest the rubber from is because no one else is willing to go into the travel to the area where he can get it because they think it can't be done. But this is the guy who does things that people say can't be done.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, the character's name is Hurukeke, and the actor's, that's also the actor's name.
Is it really?
Hurukeke Enrique Bojorquez.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Yep. And then there's Cholo, who's played by Miguel Angel Fuentes.
Right. And he's just like this big menacing dude. And
he's like he's like the Peruvian Richard Kiel. He's Richard Kiel. He
totally is. He absolutely is. He's got this, he kind of like, I feel like at first he's just like, oh God, this Fitzcarraldo dude is so weird. But then he's kind of just like, you are a crazy bastard and I am here for it. And let's do this.
I'm sorry. He's not Peruvian. He's Mexican.
Okay.
Yeah. My mistake. So, but yeah, I like towards the end, he's just like, yeah, man, I'm in. I had my doubts, but you're crazy.
Yeah, he's like, oh, you're going to let me blow stuff up? Cool.
Yeah.
Count me in.
Yeah. It's cool. It's cool when he joins in.
Yeah. So, you know, this movie is, I'd say, most well known for the fact that they actually moved a boat over. I mean, it's not a mountain. It's, you know, a piece of land that it's a big hill.
It's a pretty steep incline. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, you know, they actually moved it over all in one piece. if you watch Burden of Dreams, you'll find out that there were like engineers brought in to try to help them figure out how to do it. And like one of them was like, if you do it this way, if it goes wrong, which it probably will, maybe like 20 or 30 people will die, like for sure. And so and Herzog was just like, well, we have to do this. We have to do this. There's no other way. So that guy left and they found someone else who would sign off on it. And it did fail. Nobody died. And they managed to
that engineer was Dr. Anthony Fauci.
He found a way.
They didn't like his truth.
Yeah. So anyway, it's just like one of these movies where it's like the lore behind it is as well known as the movie itself. And it's one of the reasons why you watch it, is just to see this thing that like seems crazy to do. Like now, forget it. It would be all done digitally. And it would look fine, but like, you know that this is all done in a very authentic way.
You'd see it in the trailer. It would be, you wouldn't have to see the movie. They would show it in the trailer, kind of in slow motion with some type of like, really slow acoustic version of a like hard rock hit from the early 90s.
Yeah.
Like, all I can say, here comes the boat. Is that my life is,
actually, that's not a bad one for it.
It's like Phoebe Bridgers and a xylophone. That's it.
Oh.
And then just like these slow motion, like all the trees flying everywhere and whoever's playing
cables going haywire,
whoever they have playing Fitzcarraldo, like whatever, Willem Dafoe, with like just like laughing with a Victrola, like holding up a Victrola, like say anything.
Well, that's funny that you mentioned Willem Dafoe, considering, I mean, he didn't play the Klaus Kinski version of Nosferatu. He played Max von Schreck or whatever in Shadow of Vampire. But, the two of them did have a bit of a through line there.
Yeah, no, it occurred to me a few times, or I thought of Willem Dafoe. I mean, Willem Dafoe is kind of an anomaly. I think Willem Dafoe has been in every type of movie. He's Marvel Universe, DC Universe,
Wes Anderson Universe,
the Wes Anderson Universe, the David Lynch Universe. Has he done a Coen Brothers film yet? Like,
I don't know.
And he seems to have aged. Is it the Martin Scorsese Universe? He's Jesus in the Martin Scorsese Universe.
That's true.
Man, Willem Dafoe just is like, he's done everything. He's been everywhere. And I was thinking about him because I'm like, well, of course. I'm like, who would just go balls out like this in a performance that isn't, actually a, homicidal maniac.
Right. No, you're totally right. I mean, look, we could talk about the ins and outs of.
That's not my proposal, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, do we want to talk about our ideas a little bit and then maybe come back to some Fitzcarraldo-y things, or do you want to just kind of stay on the path?
Let's stay on the path. Let's stay
on the Amazon.
You don't want to go upriver. We're not ready for the rapids yet. We're not ready to untie the boat.
So one thing that we haven't talked about yet is why the natives untie the boat. And for that, I'll try to explain it best I can, and then I'm going to play a clip. But basically what happens is there is a full crew on this ship, as they prepare and everything. But as they get deeper into the Amazon, they start to hear the sounds of the native people. And there's certainly the stories of, what happens if you piss them off or, what they're going to do. And at a certain point, the crew in the dark of night bails. They're just like, forget it, we're out of here. And it's basically just like the captain, Erekeke, and the mechanic.
Cholo,
and Fitzcarraldo, of course. And what happens is he hears about this lore that the native people have heard that the gods will send a white man on a boat who is going to be their savior, essentially.
It's very strangely specific.
It is, it's very, very specific. And there's actually a few clips that I want to play, but basically what happens first is he gets out his, phonograph and plays Caruso. And I think that for, the native people, they see that as their sign, or at least that's what we're led to believe. So let's see. Which do I want to play first? So
I love when he goes for the Caruso. It's great.
Yeah. So let's do that first.
What's an umbrella doing here?
It must have belonged to one of the missionaries the Ivoros killed.
Strange.
It might be a last warning from the gentleman in the forest. They love such gestures.
He gets at the phonograph.
These are the best moments of his love for opera.
Now it's Caruso's turn.
Oh, yeah. Oh, the visuals are amazing.
There's this thing that's been going around on Twitter where someone, you write like, he knows the assignment, and it's like different actors and things. And it's just like, in this case, Kinski knows the assignment for sure. So then the next day, I think it's the next day, they find out that everyone's left, and this is the exchange that happens.
These Jivaro people left the interior Brazil about 300 years ago. For 10 generations, they've been wandering through the jungle, looking for a white god in a sacred boat. And they believe at the end of their pilgrimage, the white god would show them a land without sorrow, without death, where people stay young forever.
We are gonna take advantage of this myth.
What the hell has that got to do with us? If a bear-ass gets too close to me, I let him have it smack between the eyes.
This god doesn't come with cannons. He comes with the voice of Caruso.
Man, he's got such a hard-on for Caruso.
But it's kind of like maybe not the one thing that really makes him relatable. It humanizes him, whereas he just seems like this maniac who wants to, build an opera house in the jungle and wants to push a boat over a mountain. That love of opera is really just like he's peaceful and he's really passionate. And ultimately he wants to do things that are going to help people. Like he's, trying to make ice in this, in the middle of the jungle. So,
and he's also friends with like all of the little local kids, they always just want to hear the opera music, and they love to have him play it for them. So,
but it's so,
he sees the joy it brings to them.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of my favorite parts of the film. And clearly from my choice of intro, the opera aspect of the film definitely left an impression.
So what ends up happening is that the natives untie the boat after they have brought it onto the other river past the Pongo, which is the wild rapids that they're trying to avoid, and they untie the boat because they're sacrificing the boat to the gods, I believe. It's something like that.
I can't say I was entirely following, but like that.
So Fitzcarraldo ends up having this this meeting and kind of back on land where he's kind of dealing with his failure to do what he set out to do. And he gives this like awesome little mini monologue that I wanted to play. And when I watched this, I was like, man, Kinski was so damn good. What are you pointing to?
Oh, I just wanted to, so I looked it up, and it's that the chief wanted to appease the river gods, who would have been angry, like that Fitzcarraldo basically defied nature, his hubris, by moving the boat over the mountain. You're defying nature, and I guess also defiling because of all the trees they cut down. But that's the explanation that I get, is that the chief wanted to appease the river gods. So
makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, anyway, so here's this clip from when he's kind of dealing with his failure.
I will tell you something. At the time when America was hardly explored, one of those early French trappers went west from Montreal. He was the first white man to set eyes on Niagara Falls. When he returned, he told of waterfalls more vast and immense than people had ever dreamed of. No one believed him. They thought he was a madman or a liar. They asked him, "What's your proof?" He answered, "My proof is, I've seen them."
I love that.
That's a really powerful, that is a really powerful moment.
Yeah, he follows it up by saying, like, I don't know what that has to do with me. It's just like, this guy did this crazy thing. Like, all these people, well, not all these people, but people believed in him. He, tricked people into thinking that he was some sort of god. Like,
someone died.
Did all this stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, one of the guys dies while they're trying to get it up the mountain.
Yeah. It's just like, it's incredible. It's this absolutely amazing movie. I remember seeing it when I was in college and just loving it. And I'm glad that I kind of waited a while to watch it again, because it was one of those times where I was just like, I had forgotten so much about it that it was almost like watching it for the first time again. And there's a lot that I either didn't, maybe missed the first times around, or maybe like, when you're 20, you don't pick up on things the same way. And, currently in the times that we're living, we think about things a little bit differently because of certain things that are in the news. And I mean, I'm speaking more specifically about, the rights of the indigenous people. That's something that I wasn't thinking about so much when I was 20, and that I'm thinking about a lot lately. And, it kind of makes the movie very different to view it in that way. And, it was just, Dan, I'm glad that we did this, especially right after Double Impact.
A reverse palate cleanser. I don't know. But yes, as I said, roundhouse to art house. Sorry, I'm going to just drive that one into the ground. And you know what? This is so unrelated to the film, but I don't know if it's too late for this or if it can happen. I don't know if we'll ever do an episode where we talk about Amadeus, but whenever I think about who's a director that I would like to see do a remake of Amadeus, I do think Werner Herzog's Amadeus would have been something.
Ooh, that would have been wild.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, Herzog, you know, he definitely always has a vision, and he really takes you on for quite a ride. There was that movie that came out in 2010 maybe, the Cave of Forgotten Dreams.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, the 3D.
Yeah, it was done in 3D. I saw it in the theater, and I was like, Werner Herzog in 3D about a cave. I've got to see this movie. And it was incredible. It's the kind of thing where it's like, you won't have that experience again because you won't be able to see it in a theater in 3D probably ever again. It's not like it was, it's not like it did so well or is remembered so fondly that people are still like, showing it. But it was really this amazing experience. And he brought it around at the end to talking about like albino alligators in a way that like only Herzog can do. And I want to make sure that we mention Herzog's sense of humor about himself and how that's been brought into his acting career. And he showed up in Parks and Rec as this like weirdo. He's in the movie. He voices a documentary filmmaker in The Penguins of Madagascar. And it's like, oh my God, he certainly knows what he's doing.
He pops up in those things, and then you're like, what the? Werner Herzog?
He's in The Mandalorian. And
yes. Yeah.
And people, you hear about the things that he says on set of The Mandalorian, where he sees, the Baby Yoda puppet, and he's just talking about how like amazing, how incredible this thing is, and he's in love with this puppet. And it's like, it makes you, it made me
you and the rest of America.
It made me really like watching The Mandalorian a lot more because it's like signed off by this incredible filmmaker, this incredible voice.
Yeah. Gives it some credibility. Well, yeah, it's got plenty of credibility.
It's got plenty of credibility. Yeah.
I was looking to see his acting filmography, but he's directed so many things
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's great. Dan, you got to see Grizzly Man. It is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is also the person who, when there is an opportunity to tell a fascinating story about a fascinating life, he will risk everything to make it happen. I think that this was in maybe the late 70s or the 80s, where there was a volcano that was going, like, everyone was like, this is going to erupt any minute now. Everybody left except for one person. And so he wanted to make a documentary about the person who refused to leave as this volcano was going to erupt, not knowing that the volcano wasn't going to erupt, as we later found out, but was just like, it'll be worth it if I can tell the story. And unfortunately, it's, not one of his films that people are talking about anymore, because it's like he risked, aside from right now, he risked his life to make this happen. And it's like the stories behind some of the movies are sometimes greater than the movies themselves. But it's just like the passion of these people, of this person who has, these dreams and sees the value in stories that should be told.
Yeah. I'm looking at his Wikipedia page here, and
God, it's got to be the craziest Wikipedia page.
Well, there's multiple Wikipedia pages. I did not realize that he directed a concert film for The Killers.
Did he really?
Yeah,
that's interesting.
Before
we move on to what we would do, I want to play a couple of other things talking about the Amazon. And in this clip, he talks about how he and Herzog's views of the Amazon jungle differ.
Of course, we are challenging nature itself, and it hits back. It just hits back, that's all. And that's grandiose about it, and we have to accept that it is much stronger than we are. Kinski always says it's full of erotic elements. I don't see it so much erotic, I see it more full of obscenity. It's just, and nature here is vile and base. I wouldn't see anything erotical here. I would see fornication and asphyxiation and choking and fighting for survival and growing and just rotting away. Of course, there's a lot of misery, but it is the same misery that is all around us. The trees here are in misery and the birds are in misery. I don't think they sing, they just screech in pain.
And then he goes on to say,
it's an unfinished country. It's still prehistorical. The only thing that is lacking is the dinosaurs here. It's like a curse weighing on an entire landscape. And whoever goes too deep into this has his share of that curse. So we are cursed with what we are doing here. It's a land that God, if he exists, has created in anger. It's the only land where creation is unfinished yet. Taking a close look at what's around us, there is some sort of a harmony. It is the harmony of overwhelming and collective murder. And we, in comparison to the articulate vileness and baseness and obscenity of all this jungle, we, in comparison to that enormous articulation, we only sound and look like badly pronounced and half-finished sentences out of a stupid suburban novel, a cheap novel. And we have to become humble in front of this overwhelming misery and overwhelming fornication, overwhelming growth and overwhelming lack of order. Even the stars up here in the sky look like a mess. There is no harmony in the universe. We have to get acquainted to this idea that there is no real harmony as we have conceived it. But when I say this all full of admiration for the jungle. It is not that I hate it. I love it. I love it very much. But I love it against my better judgment.
Wow. Wow, indeed. It's like now you understand where like the parodies and the impressions come from.
Well, also, and I can't help but think about this, but like, you know, part of my everyday life, part of my day job is, you know, can involve interviewing people. And sometimes people, you know, they don't have very thorough answers or their answers are very basic. What I would give to have somebody answer a question the way that Herzog answers questions, where you're just like, I just asked how your breakfast was this morning, and you're telling me about how this place was, you know, created by God in anger. Okay.
And when I broke the yolk of the egg and it leaked, I said, this is destruction. This is the destruction of life. And it oozes everywhere throughout it. And I admire it and I fear it. And I hate it and I love it. And I see it as a symbol of sexuality and fertility.
Now, that would be the way that Kinski sees it. But he doesn't see it that way. He just sees it in pain and loss. I love it. Oh, my God. So, Dan, what would you do?
Oh, man. What would I do? Okay, so I was circling around a few ideas, and first I started with some directors that if there was going to be another film version of it, that I feel like would do a nice job with it. And those four, well, I guess technically five, are Baz Luhrmann.
Okay.
Baz Luhrmann's Fitzcarraldo would be, certainly a visual feast. The Coen brothers Fitzcarraldo would, it makes me think of Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? And I could see it working in that way. Oliver Stone, but I feel like it's like I want the Oliver Stone of 30 years ago.
Okay, yeah.
To direct it. And I was also like, Julie Taymor would be interesting.
Okay.
And it's Julie Taymor who would also be an interesting choice to direct my proposal, and kind of two ways. Because first I was thinking, oh, well, this should be an opera. But then I was like, I feel like having the device of an opera would work better as a musical.
Okay.
And, I'm thinking about Broadway musicals where there's a spectacle, and like the ship sequence would be, however you would do that, would be a spectacle. And I imagined there could be more humor in it, and you could go more with the psychological factor, have Caruso as a character, and have Fitzcarraldo get his guidance from Caruso, and that when he's like, what do I do? I'm in this situation, and he puts on the Victrola, and Caruso comes out and sings to him, and they duet, or Caruso could come out and have dialogue with him and be funny. I think you'd have a lot of room for some cool music, some really creative ways of staging, and just a hell of a showcase for a Broadway lead actor. The first name that I thought of was like Norbert Leo Butz, who I think people would recognize him if they saw him. He's been in a bunch of films and television, but also on Broadway. He played Steve Martin's role in Dirty Rotten Scoundrels. That's where I first came to know of him. But I mean, it's not like I don't know that you necessarily need to center it around a name or a personality. So I think it could really sell itself, and perhaps you could get a Julie Taymor or even Herzog himself to stage it. He has staged other than Killer's concerts, operas. So I'm imagining this really kind of epic musical, like almost a like a Les Mis level epic. Yeah. I'm trying to think if I have anything to add to that, but I'm like, use the music. I mean, like, this is a role that, like, without the right people doing it on film, this is a role that could come across as, like, it could end up being a, crazy Nicolas Cage movie. Herzog's already done one of those, Bad Lieutenant, Port of Call, New Orleans. So I feel like I would be really intrigued if there was Fitzcarraldo the musical. I'm intrigued. I'd buy it in a post-COVID world when it is safe to return to the theater. I will happily, don my mask if necessary and buy a ticket for Fitzcarraldo the musical. What would you do?
I'd be very intrigued to see that, and I would be right there with you, a few rows away to be safe. What would I do? I feel like, I've been talking a lot about how the motives behind making this movie the way that it was made, the things that were learned about making this movie the way that it was made were certainly, part of its story. And Burden of Dreams as a documentary, definitely showcases that. And Burden of Dreams, it's really just a platform for raw footage from the production, and man, look how crazy this was, and Herzog saying crazy things. It's mostly like a showcase for that. It's not as much of like having its own perspective. But I think that I would love to see, and I know that I've talked about this before for other movies, but a making of movie about, the making of Fitzcarraldo. And I think that it would probably also have to include, it would probably have to start with, years earlier, like finishing the making of Aguirre, The Wrath of God, because that definitely plays into this. But I think that, and maybe like a hint of like young Werner and young Klaus, tying that whole thing together. But I think that there definitely should be a narrative movie about the relationship between these people and culminating in the making of this movie. And, just 'cause it's so fantastical the way that it was done. And I don't know who I'd want to direct it. It really depends on what angle you take. I think that there's definitely a place for a more comedic version that could be like, I don't know, David Wayne doing something like it. Or it can go, take a more serious path, but there's definitely room for humor in it with somebody like Ryan Johnson, behind the wheel. But I don't know too much more about, other people that I'd want involved. I thought that for Kinski, considering the age and the look, I was thinking that it would be really fun to see Owen Wilson maybe try to do a German accent and not a Texas accent the way that he does in every movie.
We're going to drag the ship over the mountain.
Wow.
Like the cow jumped over the moon. I don't know.
I feel like he could have like a real Kinski look to him, and it would give him an opportunity to like do something even more wild than he's done in the past. And to play Herzog, I mean, definitely it turns out the last thing I Googled last night, I realized this when I looked at my phone this morning, was actors with puppy dog eyes. And my search didn't give me anything that was very Herzog worthy. Although I think that maybe Ryan Gosling, in the right circumstance, could pull something like this off. I think that he would be age appropriate for the age at which Herzog was when he was doing this, mid to late 30s, I think, something like that. I was thinking if we wanted to go for German authenticity, August Diehl I like a lot. He was Dieter in Inglourious Bastards. That's probably what you would know him best from. Not that he looks like Herzog, but if you wanted the German authenticity. Then anyway, I don't know. I think that's the path I would want to take.
What about like a Paul Bettany?
Paul Bettany. Maybe. He's definitely like got the frame of a young Werner Herzog.
I feel like he could. I feel like he could do. For some reason, I don't know. I feel like he could get the accent down.
I'm sure he could. I think he's wonderful. I think I really liked him in Uncle Frank that came out last year.
I haven't seen that yet, but he looked
very good in that. Clearly he's good in the Marvel movies. He was good in, he's been around for a long time. I've
always enjoyed Paul Bettany. A Beautiful Mind.
Beautiful Mind.
Master and Commander.
Yeah, I think, he was definitely
Knight's Tale.
He's memorable in the Da Vinci Code.
Yeah. I mean, not the best movie in the world, but
not the best movie. But I thought that
Paul
was
Bettany
good.
Only added to it.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
So yeah, Paul Bettany I think would be very good. The thing is, like, when you have a Herzog, in order to do it in a genuine way would be really tricky. You would almost, that's why I was thinking that like a David Wayne comedic version of it would be a fun way to do it, is because you could get a little cartoonish and have somebody like Andy Samberg or, like someone.
Well, I'm thinking about the film he did about
A Futile and Stupid Gesture.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Thank you. I was thinking of
Will Forte. Yeah. Will Forte would also be great as Herzog.
As Herzog or Kinski, I don't know.
Or both.
Yeah. Which I really liked the treatment for that. And yeah, I don't know, David, that would be an interesting David Wayne next move for David Wayne.
Yeah.
I like him as a director. Like I enjoy his films and
yeah,
I could see it.
What matters is these will never happen, so it doesn't matter what we say.
No, it does. Although I wouldn't be shocked if Fitzcarraldo the musical happens someday. I won't be the one to make it happen, but it's the type of thing that I could see happening in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's where we are on that.
Or it could be a series. It could be the counterpart to Mozart in the Jungle. You could have Caruso in the Jungle.
I was thinking about that. I was thinking about how this is much more Mozart in the Jungle than Mozart in the Jungle.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I haven't seen that show, but gotta wonder.
I saw the first couple of episodes.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no jungle. Talk about someone who would have been a good Klaus Kinski at a time. Malcolm McDowell, because Malcolm McDowell is in that show. Malcolm McDowell, though, he's definitely too old now.
I feel like he went from 30 to 60 really fast. You know?
That he did. Yeah.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Love Malcolm McDowell.
Love Malcolm McDowell. Yeah. Anyway, so any last words? Any you want to ready to drop the anchor on?
Is currently streaming on Amazon Prime. Watch it. It is so good.
It's definitely worth watching, and it's a beautiful film. It's a challenging film, but definitely worth your time. I feel like a more credible, movie person having seen it now, and I will continue to seek out the films of Mr. Herzog.
Yeah, what do you think is going to be next?
What do I think is going to be next for him, or what? What do I think is going to be
the next Herzog movie that you watch?
Oh, it could be Nosferatu. It could. I mean, it kind of depends on what's streaming. So it could be Nosferatu. It could be Aguirre.
The Wrath of God.
The Wrath of God. Yeah, I mean, it'll probably be one of those two. Possibly Bad Lieutenant, Port of Call, New Orleans. Probably not Grizzly Man. I feel like I need to be in a... I don't know.
Grizzly Man is wild. Sorry, going back to acting, he was the villain in Jack Reacher. The first Jack Reacher movie.
Yes.
He had no fingers or something. That was his quirk. But great villain.
I don't remember. Yes.
Great villain.
Yeah. Well, they probably couldn't get Willem Dafoe, so
they got someone better. They got Werner
Willem
Herzog.
Dafoe was on the list. Unless Willem Dafoe... I was watching Clear and Present Danger recently. Willem Dafoe pops up in that.
Yeah.
It's and I'm not complaining. So...
and it's I could easily see a Werner Herzog, The Lighthouse. That's definitely something that I could see him doing.
Yeah, you could tell. Was it Robert Eggers? Probably inspired a bit.
Well, that's the thing. Is Herzog? He's one of the greats and one of the most influential directors. And man, glad he's still around. Glad he does things like Penguins of Madagascar, which also stars John Malkovich as the villain, Dave the Penguin. Not the penguin, the octopus named Dave. And boy, is he John Malkovich in that. It's wonderful.
That's fantastic. You've given me two solid reasons to watch that movie.
You know who else would be a great Herzog, a comedic Herzog, is Bill Hader.
Oh, yeah. Oh, definitely. Definitely. Yeah.
Anyway.
Who I recently watched in The Skeleton Twins. I recently watched for the first time.
I saw that in the theater. I was, I remember I was picking somebody up from the airport after work one day, and it was going to be quite a while. So there was a movie theater nearby that was playing, and I just popped into that until I was due to go to the airport.
Great movie, but
and a greater story that I just told.
Absolutely. Speaking of great stories, shall I share what's going to be coming up on our next episode?
It almost sounded like you were going to introduce a movie that's a share movie, the way that you said share. You kind of leaned into that word a little bit.
No, though now I am frustrated that one of the lead characters in this movie is not played by Cher, because that would have been awesome, especially when this movie came out in the amazing movie year of 1989.
Yeah.
And we're going to be talking about, we're going back to the action well. It's going to be Tango and Cash. Sylvester Stallone, Kurt Russell, Jack Palance.
I hope that no one's getting whiplash from these hard turns we're doing on this show.
No, if you're along for the ride, you are along for the ride. Sharp turns, etc.
Yeah, well, Dan, I am very, very excited for having these. You know, when we logged on earlier, you said that for some reason you were feeling Tango and Cash was going to be the next one, and I was looking at our list of maybes, and I saw that right before you said that, and I was just like right on the same page with you. So very excited.
Not like Tango and Cash for most of Tango and Cash, but when it really matters, like Tango
when
and
it
Cash.
really matters.
And Alex and Chad.
And Alex and Chad. That's right. It took me a second. Well, okay. Dan, as you journey through the Amazon on your ship, I wish you a very good journey.
Good journey.